About a year or so ago, you and I were talking about the launch of what we now know as the Apple Vision Pro. I believe I referred to the potential of this thing as the second coming of Jesus, direct quote.
Yes,
Now,
yes, you did.
look, the products that launched in February in the United States, we only just got it here in Australia. And because it's now in Australia, it means that you can go to an Apple store and do yourself a bit of a demo. Now, look, I don't think I'm speaking out of school when I suggest that the idea of going down to your Apple store and spending $6,000 on a virtual reality headset is within
Ouch.
neither Simon's budget nor my own. So a demo is basically as close as either of us are
I
getting to
bought
this
two
thing
this
anytime.
morning. What are you talking
Oh,
about?
really? It was very
I
nice
gave
of you
one
to
to
buy me
feed.
one. Oh no! I thought I was in.
I'm going to rent it
Look,
out to people.
and so the reality is that for most people, you're not buying the Apple Vision Pro. Like, it's just not going to happen. As cool a bit of kit as it is,
Yeah.
but I think that it's really cool if people get the opportunity to go and do a demo of this thing, because I really do think headsets like this really represent the future of where we're going with a lot of the screen-based entertainment that we're watching. Now, we're
Yes.
going to talk about that as a broader concept in a short while because I've done the demo. I've done it twice now. And Simon Foster, you also did the demo this morning.
Yes. Look, when I understood that
Mm.
it was to be part of the intermission segment here on your friendly podcast, Screen Watching, I did race out to for a 9 o'clock session at the George Street Apple Store to test out
Yeah.
this thing that you've been blathering on about for the last year. And I've got to
Question:
say,
Did
I've
it
had quite
did
a
it live up to my hype?
I've had quite a bit of experience with the virtual reality headsets over the years.
Mm.
I dealt when that kind of became a thing a few years back. I went to a few demonstrations and a few sort of company launches and it's good. I enjoy it, but it wasn't quite what I was hoping for. But I've got to say, having sat through the half-hour demo session hosted by my good friend Hugh at the Apple Store in George Street, I've got to say
Mm.
that it absolutely kind of rocked my world, especially when you get to the immersive experience, and we'll get onto that a little bit later. But just the interactivity of this, what they call spatial computing, I was pretty jazzed.
Yeah, so look, when you do the half-hour tutorial, there's a very specific sort of path that you go through with it, and they'll talk you through initially some of the pretty simple basics of it. So they'll show you how photos display, and look, it's pretty cool being able to see a photo that you've taken. And look, they're not photos that you've taken; you're looking at the demo photos. But it's cool to be able to see a
Hmm.
photo that you've taken, sort of blown up pretty big, and look at that, go, oh, okay, that's kind of cool, and it's probably a good way to go through your memories.
Hmm.
The thing that sort of really sort of caught me a bit sort of unexpected at the beginning was they showed you a panorama photo, and you've been able to create
Oh,
panorama
yes.
photos in your iPhone for a few years now. But when you look at
Yep.
one of those big, like literally, it's more than 180 degrees. I mean, it wasn't quite
It's
360 either, but it was kind of close, like 300
it's
maybe.
pretty
Um,
breathtaking, yeah.
yeah, so obviously it's the most breathtaking photos that they're demonstrating to you. But when I was there and I was like going from left to right, and there's like a big sort of mountain range around you, like that was really pretty cool. And it's
Hmm.
just a static image, but still, I kind of felt like I was there because it was so large and encompassing.
Let me.
And that's when my brain sort of tricked into the idea that just that pure scale around really is a bit of a game changer. But the real game changer to me wasn't when it was completely surrounding me. It was when it was actually that mix of virtual and, I guess, augmented reality. Because it's not quite pure augmented reality where everything's just layered over the top of things, but really it's kind of, you can look forward and see like in a 90-degree view, or maybe a bit
Hmm.
more than that, the virtual world that's created, but then you can look to your right and you're just in the real world. And to me, like that was the real game changer.
Maybe we're jumping forward a bit here. Let's just set up what it means to put on the headset, and prepare yourself for the term they use is spatial computing, is
Yeah.
what I was told to
So
say. Um,
first
so
thing, no dairy for 3 weeks before you do it.
that's exactly right. Exactly
Mm,
right.
yeah.
So you adjust. First of all, they take can you remember the term for it when they actually take a sort of like a visual rendering of your face? You've got to look into your phone. You look left, you look right, you look up, you look down, and they tailor a face fitting form that goes onto the device before it goes on your head, so that it's a fairly solid. There's some light coming in near the nose, he says, which is quite normal. But then you're fitted with these. They bring out the goggles, they bring out the headset for you, and you're locked in. And then they start going, and very soon they're able to bring up in front of you your apps, just like you would a computer screen, that are floating in midair, and you use your eyes as the sensor, and you use your fingers by tapping as you would a cursor or a mouse. You click, click. That becomes what your fingers do. So
but you're not tapping a device, though, Simon. The thing that we need to really express to people is that it's kind of like you're making an OK sign with your hand, like you're taking your thumb and your index finger, and you're kind of just tapping them together. And regardless where you're doing it, anywhere around your body, it still seems to pick up on it, which is Apple witchcraft.
It really is, and I'm not quite sure the technology. There is a camera, or there is some kind of lens device that picks up the clicking with the fingers, which you have to hold horizontally. I know you can't sort of put them up and down like you would like a birdie going cheep cheep. Like, for those watching the YouTube and the Spotify channel can see I'm doing, but you hold it flat. And do that, and that acts like the clicking of the mouse, and it's extraordinary. And as I said, your eyes are the cursor, so you look at an app, which then gives a small sort of movement, so you know that you're looking at it, and your eyes act, and then you do the tap and you click on it. It's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, look, really incredible. But I guess because, look, we can go through sort of section by section the experience of it, but I think for people who listen to a podcast like this, they probably want to hear from us, what's the experience like of watching a movie within the space? Okay, sure. And then also I want to talk about spatial videos, because I think that enters an entirely different realm, maybe actually a much more interesting realm than the idea of just a big screen movie in your lounge room.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, let's talk about the cinema screen. So first of all, were you impressed by it? Okay, and the second thing, which is obviously where I'm leading with this question, is do you think there's a comparable experience to seeing something in a cinema?
Well, that's a bit of a leading question, Dan Barrett. You know my views on how unique the cinema-going experience is, but I will say that...
Which is admittedly, Simon, why I was really interested to know how you found that experience.
Exactly right, but I will say that the Apple Vision Pro is a marked improvement on how I watch movies at home, whether it's the television or, God forbid, on my phone for whatever reason. The immersive experience, the complete surround vision that it provides for whatever content I want to watch through the goggles, if that's what they're called, the headset, was extraordinary. They showed us they showed me a clip from the Apple TV sci-fi series Foundation, and it looked breathtaking. They played it in cinema mode, where it looks like you've got your own cinema screen. They made it clear I could change my seat angle depending on where my favorite seat in the cinema was. They could add in the sensation of people kicking the seat behind you or looking at their other phones if they wanted. Androids, of course, not Apple's. No, they can't do that. But other than that, it was a wholly immersive and totally winning experience for me.
Yeah, so the experience of sitting... So there's two modes you can sort of watch things. So you can either watch it in a fake environment, where they didn't show me this when I did the first test through, but the second one, the woman was a little bit more relaxed and just kind of let me sort of play around a bit. So there were 3 viewing modes I was able to see through just the default settings. So one of them is kind of like a black void cinema experience, where it's kind of like the world's most boring cinema screening room, where there's nothing up on the walls or anything. It's just a screen in front, and you can kind of see like the outlines of some chairs and stuff around, which is fine. But the other 2 experiences were, one was on a beach, I think, and the second one was a very sort of Tasmania-like sort of dark and moody little rock formation above like a lake. And so that, to me, I thought was probably actually the coolest of the 3 different versions, probably the one I'd use the most frequently. But you can also use the little crown scrolly wheel on top of your goggles to remove all the artifice around, so you kind of just have that screen that you can kind of place wherever you are in the room. And I kind of think for most people, that's probably the setting that I think most people end up going with. Because it's the thing that actually blends that real life into being able to just watch your movie. So I'd be more inclined to use this probably at nighttime when I've got time to really concentrate on it. Turn down the lights in the house and just watch the movie up against the bare wall of the lounge room.
You made a very valid and interesting point and it's probably the one point of difference I had with your experience of it was that you said in your terrific write up in Always Be Watching during the week that you didn't notice the weight on your face, that it wasn't a significant problem, and that you'd probably get used to it, or words to that effect. I kind of did feel the weight of it, and I remember one point thinking, boy, if I'm watching Napoleon, which is the Apple film they're using on their website.
3.5 hours.
Yeah, if I'm in there for 3.5 hours, if I decide to check out Audrey Hepburn and Henry Fonda in War and Peace and settle in for all 5 hours of it, that's a long haul to have that on your face.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's probably fair. And also, we only had half an hour each time to do it. So the real test would be sitting through like a 2 hour to 2 hour 20 movie and seeing how that goes. But what I would probably say, just from, I mean, the weight experience, obviously mileage will vary depending, I guess, on your neck strength. So a young virile man like myself might have less issues than a man with severe neck problems like you. But the sort of thing of what you were just saying just before we got to this part, just in terms of does it replace that cinema experience? Like,
Yes.
Obviously, no, it's not the same thing as sitting in a real room seeing one of these movies. But the reality is that if we were in a situation where if I had the choice of watching the same movie, okay, so let's say that, look, the other night, as part of your Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival, you played Buckaroo Banzai at the drive-in.
Sure.
Okay, if I had the opportunity to go to the drive-in and watch Buckaroo Banzai, I absolutely would have taken that if I wasn't just really tired on Saturday and didn't get along to it, which I apologize for. But, that's kind of a really fun experience that can't really be replicated. But if that was just playing at like the local event cinema, and I was sort of stuck between a decision of, do I go to the effort of catching the train, going in there, having to deal with human people, and just like all the rigmarole of having to go to the cinema experience, okay, or just watch it at home, the trade-offs are kind of enough for me to think, you know what, the experience of watching it at home with my Apple Vision Pro is just far superior. And I'd be just very happy doing that.
Yeah, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I found it to be and I think maybe I've changed a bit over the last 6 months in that the nature of movies and my willingness to sort of just go into George Street and go through the drudgery of having to get a popcorn and go and sit into another boring Marvel film or rom-com or whatever. The kind of stuff that I've just seen too much of in the last 30 years, I would willingly do that and be rewarded for doing that by doing it on the Apple Vision Pro headset. That's what I feel. I think it's an entirely suitable way. And we have spoken of in the past several different technological advances which are saying this is going to be the new way to watch movies. This will change the way cinema is seen and movies are absorbed by the public and content is distributed. And none of them have really come true to any real extent. I can actually see that happening with the Apple Vision Pro. I can see cinemas having to pivot and provide an almost entirely new experience to keep people coming back to cinemas. Not immediately, because as you point out, it's a $6,000 give or take investment, and that's not going to be every family's, within their means, but
barely any, really. But yeah,
barely any, really. Although I did come home, and the very first thing I said to Fiona was, "Do we have a spare $6,000 anywhere I don't know about? Because I'll take it."
Look, here's the thing. Like, I'm feeling especially impoverished in the last couple of weeks, only because I just made this in-state move, and there's expenses doubling up. Of currently, I'm renting and paying a mortgage in a state, and oh gosh, can't wait for that to end in a couple of weeks' time. But once that sort of winds down, like, I may have a few extra pennies in my pocket, and after a couple of months, like, maybe I'll be thinking about one of these. It's much to my wife's horror, I'm sure. But if I could afford it, I was definitely thinking about it after the second demo. Like, it's just really compelling.
Sound was terrific. Audio playback and the speakers that are very neatly and very streamlined on the side of your headset. It sounded fantastic. In fact, when we first revved up the device, it had been set very loud, and it kind of blew me back in the chair a bit. But he said, "Oh, sorry about that," and he fixed it because as you're doing it, your Apple Guide, your little Apple Sherpa next to you, he's looking at it on an iPad, so he can see what you see. He can guide you through.
You know what? Because there's a number of demo videos that they show throughout it, and the next thing we're going to talk about is the immersive videos, and maybe we can kind of pivot towards that just off the back of this. But
sure,
there's these videos that they show you, and it's kind of like a compile of, let's say, about 90 seconds of, like short little 10-second videos showing you different types of experiences. And sorry, maybe just to explain the immersive part of it really quickly. Basically, Apple, and I've seen photos of this, basically, in the same way that you've got like IMAX cameras and they film in that very large format for the IMAX size screen, Apple have created these other types of camera rigs where it's not a dedicated camera, but I believe it's multiple cameras that are like on this sort of large rig harness type thing that are able to capture like a large format image. And so they call that immersive videos. And so they show off the immersive videos as part of this package. But the experience is you are there with your Sherpa who's there guiding you through it all. And they're watching what you're looking at and the direction you're looking at and stuff. And I found that these videos, which are showing things like there's a woman sort of doing a tightrope walk across like a large cavernous area, and there's elephants at one stage, and some guys doing parkour, and there's some guys playing basketball.
The Sharks were great.
The Sharks, all of that.
Oh, yeah, the sports stuff was amazing. The soccer stuff was just...
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a moment because I really want to touch on that. But I just found this awkward moment where I knew that the lady who was like guiding me through it was watching where I was looking, and I got really nervous when the clip came up of the young lady in the swimsuits, and I was like, focus.
Getting into the icy river. I thought... I thought the same thing. They know I'm looking at the middle of the screen, and I really shouldn't be looking at the middle of the screen, but I'm doing it.
No, exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, is awkward. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, these immersive videos, absolutely incredible. And this experience is actually better than that cinema experience for me because they're filming it on this large format, which kind of takes over your entire space. And so I sort of went down two paths on this one. One, they show you some clips of a football match where you're literally right behind the net as like this football match is taking place. And then there was also a basketball game taking place. Okay. And both of those, the actual experience of watching these sports when you've got better than like courtside seats, like you really are right there on the field watching it, like absolutely incredible. Like there is no way you can replicate a sporting experience that's better than if you're actually maybe competing in the sport. Like that's the only way you're getting closer to really feel this. And I thought if I was seeing an entire match like this, and keep in mind, I went and did this demo and then went home and started watching a bit of Olympics Games coverage on the TV. Okay. And I was just thinking like, this would be so incredible within like this Apple immersive experience than like the way that everybody's at home watching this right now.
I as a mad soccer / football, depending on what part of the world you're in, fan, I was completely dazzled by the behind the scenes stuff, the replay of goals being scored. And I imagine, I don't know how, for those of us who sort of can sit for 90 minutes and watch a traditional game of soccer and it's the standard sort of camera halfway up the stadium and just follows the team and the ball back and forth up and down the field as it happens. And you only get those sort of flash camera angles and when they're showing highlights or when a goal is scored. I don't know how like a full game would play out, how they'd utilize that technology. I'm sure Apple will figure it out. But you're right, those special sequences, the replays of goals being scored, and not only that, but watching it in the immersive experience, you can look around the stadium, you can see the the scoreboard up the other end, you can see the patrons and the screaming fans sitting beside you, as well as seeing the action on field. So that was pretty amazing, as was the shark stuff. As soon as they went, they led with soccer and sharks, and I was sold.
And worth noting that we're watching not a 2D filmed version, but it actually is 3D, like encompassing the spatial sort of elements that they keep talking about.
And in 8K. They made the point that it was 4K in each eye. So you're getting an 8K resolution up there on the up there before you. And like when the baby rhino is coming towards you, or that scene at the kid's birthday party in the demo session when they blow out the cake and have the streamers, it was terrific.
Yeah, and so what I got to think about, because I did the demo, I came home and told my mates on the group chat saying, I went to the Apple Vision Pro demo, and of course, because just the sort of riffraff that I hang around in, obviously the conversation came away straight to what would pornography be like in this. And the only sort of thing I could maybe sort of liken the idea of that to is, remember that scene in Boogie Nights where they're at the New Year's Eve party, and it's in the early afternoons, and you've got the... oh gosh, what's his name? One of the greatest actors, star of Fargo.
Seymour Hoffman.
No.
Yes,
William H. Macy. Okay, William H. Macy goes looking for his wife and finds her out in the driveway having sex with some guy while like there's a whole bunch of dudes standing around. And I just kind of thought that experience that the dudes all standing around watching this is probably the experience what pornography would be like watching it within the Apple Vision Pro. But then because I'm me, my brain went somewhere a lot more wholesome. And I started thinking about the experience of what would drama be like here. And obviously it would be very much like that experience of going out to the driveway and watching people having sex on the driveway. But I was thinking about things like, have you ever been to like a sort of interactive theater thing like Sleep No More in New York or anything like that, where you're seeing sort of drama taking place around you and you kind of follow the drama as a physical being?
Yes, yeah, I absolutely have. Yeah, some of the musicals I've been to, sure.
Yeah, I kind of think that this is like maybe where the future of a lot of the entertainment we watch is maybe heading. Maybe it's less that we're really sort of inactive participants, and instead we actually are like actively just following around the action as it's happening. Like maybe that is the future of it. Because there's that shot in the immersive video where you're watching a young woman, like she's a singer and she's got like a band sort of playing in the
Alicia
same room.
Keys. I thought that was Alicia Keys, yeah.
Is it Alicia Keys? I just thought it was some random lady. I'm not sure.
I think
but anyway.
It was Alicia Keys.
Again,
yeah,
another
right.
Yeah,
and she was very attractive, and yet she had a beautiful voice. And you're in the recording studio; she's singing right to your face. And as you look around, you're seeing all the band members and all the production crew, watching her and tapping their toes. And so
But what I was just going to say is that you're just so close to her in proximity that you're kind of looking her in the eyes. And with that, like, there's that intimacy that you have when you see a person in real life singing at you. And like, sometimes that's really awkward and a bit sort of nerve inducing. But if you can kind of take that element away from it, just showed like the amount of, I guess, the engagement that you have as a viewer and how the size and scope of all this really can play that trick with your mind.
How does it become an everyman toy? At what point will this be further streamlined, price come down, the technology becomes such that all of us who stumble and stutter just trying to get the most out of our iPhones are able to use one of these things?
Look, what I'd say is this is my assumption as to how this goes over the next couple of years. And what I've always argued was that something like the Apple Vision Pro is never going to be like on day one, the thing that everyone takes up and then suddenly cinemas are putting out signs out the front saying, sorry, going out of business next week. Like none of that's ever going to happen. But it's one of these things where this is kind of like the first step of heading towards like an entire new paradigm of how we're like engaging with screen culture. And the idea of leaving the house to watch screens to me just feels really antiquated and increasingly so as this technology gets better. What we need to do is bypass this technology gap that we all have where we all feel comfortable with it. To feel comfortable with it, we've got two things. One, the technology needs to get better to the point where we're comfortable with it. And two, the price of it needs to come down. So what happens from here? I think what you start seeing is this first version becomes more for developers, but then you'll start seeing it a little bit like, you know how Segways got embraced by like tour operators. I think you're going to start seeing the Apple Vision Pro being used in very similar commercial ways, not so much for the public to engage in, but as much as like training facilities, safety demonstrations, all of that kind of thing. I think you're going to start seeing some very practical use for these headsets. People are going to have a little bit of exposure to them, but it's not going to be like a mainstream thing just yet. The next version, it'll get a bit cheaper, it'll get a bit lighter, the experience, the form factor will just sort of improve that little bit more, and it's pretty good now. But it'll get better, and as I said, that price will come down. You'll start seeing a few more people playing with it. But where it needs to be for people to feel like they're using it in their lives is the initial thing will be, is it helping with productivity? And like, I'm a work from homer these days for the most part. Pretty much like if I had one of these goggles, I think I'd be pretty comfortable putting these on and working within that virtual space all day. But are they going to be able to sell it to other work from homers like me? And I think the answer is probably yes, but that price point's going to come down unless work's going to pay for it for me, in which case, bring it on. But that'll start getting people comfortable with the technology on a regular basis. The other thing they're going to have to do is work out co-viewing. So most streaming services right now actually have the capability to link your account to, actually, when I say most, some, link your account to your friends and you can have like sort of viewing parties. Okay. And like within the Facebook, like Meta VR headsets, the Quests, you can do this kind of thing with a few platforms as well. But it'd be good to be able to say, hey, Simon, we've got this screener we have to watch for the podcast this week. Let's watch it together. We work out the time and then we have like that shared experience. but you're really going to need that shared experience for people's lounge rooms. So if you've got two or three
Yes.
of these headsets around, you and your wife sitting around, and you're like, oh, we're going to watch, the next Emmanuel movie.
Hmm.
Both of you put on your headsets, and you'll be able to shift it so you can both see each other in the same room and engage that way. But you'll also have the same large screen playing the movie at the exact same time with, synced up. I think that's going to be
Sure.
hugely important for at least us in terms of like a Western perspective. But also, I would maybe point to other countries that aren't necessarily sort of blessed in the way Australia is, with large lounge rooms and, large sort of family sort of dynamics. There's a lot of places around the world right now where there's just a lot of single people living in some very small apartments around the place, where the idea of putting this on and escaping into a place that isn't your dingy small apartment where you're living there by yourself, that's going to be really appealing really, really soon. So just keep your own perspective involved as you think about where this grows and develops.
Well, I think we've done all we've had to do to be each sent from Apple a headset. So do contact us, Apple, and we'll provide our contact address. Great intermission, Dan Barrett. Thank you for bringing us up to date on that. And it was a bit of a game changer. I think I'll look back on us having this sort of chat and realize that we probably did. We were there for a moment when how we embrace and engage with a new kind of screen watching was born. So fun times.
Yeah, I do recommend people should go out and do this demo. Like, this is not going to be probably, and most people listening, like, it's not going to be in your price point. Like, it's just not. Like, $6,000 is a lot to spend on this. But at the same time, like, it's really freaking cool. And I think people should get a bit of a
So you
glimpse
just
as to
go
what
to
that
the
future
Apple
really can look and feel like.
go to the Apple website where you can get an Apple demo. You can just book a demo time at your nearby Apple store, then rock up there. I got in half an hour early this morning, and they just walked me in. So I don't think wasn't a huge queue to do it. So it's I mean, there will be after this podcast, but try to get in early.
Yeah, well, look, I've done it twice, and both times there were definitely other people doing the demo at the same time. And both of them were
Yeah.
weekdays in the middle of the day. So, not exactly optimum times where you're going to bump into people. I'm sure on the weekends it's probably quite a bit harder to get it. But it is fairly easy just to find a time that's convenient for you and go and do it. So give it a shot. Other people are doing it, so you have to be a bit patient at times, but it's not hard to get a demo. And they're pretty friendly about it all. Like, it's a good experience.